It was a rainy evening in New York City, the streets of Manhattan glowing with reflections from neon lights and car headlights. Inside a busy restaurant near Times Square, where tourists and locals mingled over clinking glasses and lively conversations, a young woman named Emily tried to blend into the crowd. It was her 22nd birthday, but her celebration consisted only of herself, sitting in a wheelchair at a small corner table. In front of her was a simple vanilla cake with a single pink candle flickering against the glass window streaked with rain. 6 months earlier, Emily's life had changed forever. Before the accident, her body was her instrument, each dance step performed with precision and passion. She had dreamed of theaters, applause, and lights. Now all she felt was the awkward silence that followed her wherever she went. People glanced, then quickly looked away. They didn't mean harm, but their discomfort made her feel like an outsider in her own world. She still remembered the warmth of the spotlight on her skin during her last rehearsal, the sound of applause that had once fueled her. But those memories quickly collided with others: the screech of tires on a wet highway, the crushing pain in her legs, the sterile smell of hospitals. The waiter had placed her table near the large floor-to-ceiling window, smiling politely as if it were the best seat in the house. But Emily knew it was the farthest table from the main dining room, almost hidden, as if her presence would disturb the glittering atmosphere. The cake in front of her looked small and lonely, almost mocking her solitude. She stared at the candle flame, practicing the breathing her physical therapist had taught her. Inhale for 4 counts, hold, release for 4. It was meant for nerve pain, but Emily found it also calmed the anxiety she felt when strangers' eyes darted away from her chair. Through the rainy glass, something caught her attention. A man in his 30s adjusted the hood of a bright yellow raincoat on his daughter, who looked about 6. The girl laughed shyly as raindrops slid off her boots. The man knelt to fix her coat with patient hands before they both walked toward the entrance. Emily assumed they would be seated in the main area, among families and groups laughing loudly. But after a brief exchange with the hostess, the man began walking toward her lonely corner. Her heart raced. Approaches usually meant pity or awkward words. But when the man stopped at her table, with the little girl half hidden behind his damp jacket, his voice was soft and kind. "Hi, I'm Michael, and this is my daughter, Lily. We noticed you were celebrating alone. Would you mind if we joined you for a bit?" Emily froze for a moment, caught off guard. The little girl clutched a folded card made from construction paper, covered in colorful crayon drawings. Her shy eyes peeked at Emily as she stretched out the card like it was the most precious gift. That simple request shattered the invisible wall Emily had built around herself. She nodded before she could second-guess it. Michael pulled out a chair for Lily, leaving space for Emily to move freely. He sat slightly to the side, careful not to invade her space. Lily carefully placed the card on the table. The drawing showed 3 stick figures under a rainbow, with "Happy Birthday" written in purple across the top. Emily's throat tightened as she looked at it. "My name's Emily. Thank you. This is beautiful." For the first time in months, her smile was real. The candle's smoke still lingered in the air when Michael pulled a small lighter from his pocket. "Would you like me to light it again?" he asked. "That way we can all make a wish together." Emily hesitated, then nodded. The tiny flame flickered once more, casting a warm glow across the table. Lily clapped her hands in excitement. "If more than one person blows out the candle, the wish becomes stronger," she explained with the confidence only a child could have. "It's like pushing on a swing. The more people push, the higher you go." Emily chuckled softly. For the first time in months, laughter didn't feel forced. The 3 of them leaned forward, counted to 3, and blew the candle out together. The smoke curled upward, carrying with it an unexpected sense of lightness. Michael leaned back, smiling. "Birthday girl cuts the cake first," he said, sliding the knife gently toward Emily. At first, she froze. Usually, people rushed in to help, assuming she couldn't handle even the simplest tasks. But Michael simply waited. She gripped the knife and carefully cut 3 slices, serving Lily first, then Michael, then herself. That small act, being given the chance to do things on her own, felt revolutionary. The cake wasn't extraordinary, just vanilla with white frosting. But to Lily, it was pure magic. She attacked her slice with enthusiasm, frosting quickly smearing across her nose. Emily burst out laughing, covering her mouth as if surprised by her own joy. Michael smiled at the sound. "I work as a maintenance supervisor downtown, mostly night shifts, keeping the buildings running while everyone else sleeps." It was simple conversation, yet for Emily, it meant the world. For months, all anyone talked to her about were doctors, therapy, and recovery. Here was a man talking about life, about work, about ordinary things. "My dad fixes everything," Lily chimed in proudly. "Even the elevators when they get scared." Emily raised her brows. "Scared elevators?" Lily nodded seriously. "They make noises, but Daddy talks to them nicely and oils their feelings. Then they're okay again." Michael laughed. "I oil the gears, not the feelings." But she likes to think otherwise. The table filled with warmth, their conversation flowing naturally. For Emily, the restaurant no longer felt like a stage where she was on display. It felt normal. Her phone buzzed again. The ringtone was unmistakable. Her father, Richard, a powerful New York businessman. She let it ring unanswered. Lily leaned forward, whispering conspiratorially, "Sometimes I don't answer either, especially when there's cake." Emily laughed so hard her eyes watered. For once, ignoring her father didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like freedom. As the plates were cleared, a server accidentally bumped Emily's wheelchair. One of the wheels wobbled, and she tensed. Normally, this would bring a storm of apologies, hands trying to fix things without asking. But Michael calmly smiled. "No harm done," he told the server. Then, turning to Emily, "If you'd like, I could take a quick look. I've probably got the right wrench in my truck." Emily hesitated, surprised. He wasn't insisting, he was offering. The choice was hers. "If it's not too much trouble," she said softly. Michael nodded and left to grab his tools. While he was gone, Lily pulled out a small notebook and began sketching with a restaurant pencil. She glanced up at Emily. "Do you like being in a wheelchair?" she asked, with the blunt honesty only children have. Emily swallowed. "Not really. I used to be a dancer." Lily tilted her head thoughtfully. "But my teacher showed us wheelchair dancing. They spin really fast. You could be a spinning dancer now." Emily blinked, caught off guard by the innocence of the idea. She smiled faintly. When Michael returned, he crouched beside the chair, careful not to touch without permission. "May I?" he asked. Emily nodded. His hands moved with practiced ease, tightening bolts, testing the frame. "It's stable now," he said, standing up. As they prepared to leave, Lily tore her drawing from the notebook and handed it to Emily. 3 stick figures under a sky full of stars, all with wheels drawn onto their legs. "So you won't forget us," she said proudly. Emily's heart swelled. She took the paper gently, as if it were fragile treasure. Michael cleared his throat. "There's a coffee shop near Central Park with proper ramps and good space for wheelchairs. We usually stop there on Saturdays before Lily's art class. Would you like to join us this weekend?" The words tumbled out before Emily could overthink them. "I'd love to." They exchanged numbers. Michael typed carefully into her phone, the same way he had handled her wheelchair. Steady, respectful, without rushing. As they walked out into the rain, Lily's bright yellow coat shone like a small sun in the gray evening. Emily sat in the back of the car her father insisted she still use, clutching the child's drawing to her chest. Meanwhile, across town, Richard paced in his luxurious office, scrolling through photos that had already begun circulating online. His daughter, the once promising dancer, now seen dining with a maintenance worker, and his little girl. To him, it was more than gossip. It was a threat to the image he had spent his life protecting. and Emily had no idea how furious her father already was. The next morning, Emily rolled into the living room of her father's penthouse overlooking Central Park. The grand piano where she had once practiced had been removed months ago, replaced with cold, polished furniture. Her father, Richard Harris, stood by the window, arms crossed, his phone buzzing with constant notifications. "We need to talk about last night," he said without even looking at her. His voice carried the weight of authority he used in boardrooms. "The photos are everywhere. You, sitting with a maintenance worker and his daughter. Do you understand how this looks?" Emily steadied her breath. She had grown used to his controlling tone, but something inside her had shifted after that night. "His name is Michael, and the little girl is Lily. They simply kept me company. That's all." Richard finally turned, his eyes sharp. "It's not all when it's you. Everything you do is scrutinized. You cannot afford to appear vulnerable." The last word landed like a blade. Emily clenched her fists. For months she had allowed him to dictate her life, too tired and broken to resist. But now, she found her voice. "What I need isn't more control, Dad. What I need is to be treated like a person. Last night they did that. They didn't see me as a burden or a headline. They just saw someone eating cake alone." For a moment, Richard faltered. His lips pressed into a thin line, but no response came. Then he muttered almost defensively, "The world isn't kind, Emily. If you keep letting people in like that, it will crush you." She turned her chair away and left him standing there. It was the first time she had ever walked, or rather, wheeled, away from his command. Days passed, and messages from Michael brightened her phone screen. Simple words, but full of life. "Lily wants to know if you prefer chocolate or vanilla cake. She drew you with angel wings today." They made Emily smile in a way she hadn't in months. On Saturday, she kept her promise. At a cozy cafe near Central Park, she met Michael and Lily. The place had wide aisles and real ramps, not the steep, awkward ones she usually encountered. Michael had already ordered her mocha, remembering her offhand comment. Lily spread her markers and crayons across the table, drawing with fierce concentration. Emily sipped her drink, gathering courage, and then spoke quietly. "Sometimes I still dream I'm dancing. When I wake up, it feels like my body betrays me all over again." Michael didn't rush to fill the silence. He just listened. Then, gently. "When Lily's mom left, it felt like part of me was torn away. I thought I'd never feel whole again. But I realized life doesn't stop. You learn to be different. Not less, just different." Emily looked at him, surprised by the honesty. Lily, overhearing bits, piped up, "Daddy says it's okay to be sad, but someone has to make the hot chocolate too." The three of them laughed. For Emily, the sound felt like oxygen. But the peace was short-lived. That evening, back at the penthouse, Richard was waiting with his assistant. Papers were spread across his desk. Access logs from company buildings, security reports, inconsistencies. The assistant looked at Emily seriously. "On the night of your accident, someone accessed your schedule from an office computer. Hours later, paparazzi knew exactly where you'd be. It wasn't coincidence." Emily's heart pounded. "You're saying my accident wasn't just bad luck?" Richard slammed a hand on the desk. "We don't know if they intended to cause the crash. But someone made sure photographers were there, waiting. It was deliberate." The room spun. For 6 months, she had believed fate had stolen her future. Now she realized someone's greed had paved the way for it. Her mind immediately flickered to Michael. Not with suspicion, but with memory. He had mentioned strange access logs, expired badges that still worked, reports no one paid attention to. He had seen the signs, but no one had listened. Her trust in her father wavered. The same man, now furious over betrayal, had ignored the warnings, too concerned with appearances to notice danger. Emily excused herself and went to her room, her pulse racing. She stared at her phone, torn between fear and the need for truth. A new message appeared on the screen. It was from Michael. "I found more irregularities in the building reports. Someone's been tracking your movements. You need to know this." Emily closed her eyes, a chill running down her spine. The fragile hope she had begun to build now trembled under the weight of something darker. Her accident had not been fate. It had been orchestrated. And the worst part? She didn't know who to trust anymore. That night, Emily lay awake in her apartment, staring at the ceiling. Michael's message replayed in her mind. "Someone's been tracking your movements." Her chest tightened. For months, she had believed her life had collapsed because of an accident. Now she knew it had been engineered by betrayal. The next morning, she confronted her father in his office. He was already poring over security files, jaw tight. "Michael noticed the irregularities weeks ago," Emily said firmly. "He filed reports, but nobody listened. You were too busy worrying about your reputation to see the danger." Richard froze. His usually sharp retorts never came. For the first time, he lowered his eyes, the weight of guilt pressing on him. The investigation moved quickly. A trusted public relations consultant had been leaking Emily's schedule for months, feeding paparazzi in exchange for money and influence. Her accident had been the cruel consequence of their greed. While lawyers and detectives circled her father's world, Emily found her refuge in Saturday mornings at the cafe with Michael and Lily. There, the noise of lawsuits and press conferences faded away. Lily painted new universes with watercolors. Michael quietly fixed loose chair bolts or a wobbly table leg, and Emily rediscovered the sound of her own laughter. One morning, after a painful spasm nearly forced her to cancel, Michael didn't panic. Instead, he sat on the hallway floor outside the accessible bathroom and began talking in his calm, steady voice. "Did you know air conditioners work best when there's exactly a 20-degree difference between supply and return air? Too much more, and you waste energy." Emily, gripping the rail, let out a shaky laugh. "Are you seriously boring me out of my pain?" "It works with Lily's nightmares," he said. "Why not here?" She realized he wasn't pitying her. He was simply present, unflustered, steady. It was what she needed most. Richard, watching the security footage later, finally understood. His daughter didn't need control. She needed respect. A week later, at a press conference, Richard surprised everyone. He stood at the podium not as a CEO, but as a father. His voice shook as he announced, "6 months ago, my daughter was injured in what we believed was an accident. Today, we know it was the result of deliberate breaches of privacy by someone within our own circle. That ends now." He promised sweeping changes, stricter protections, and accessibility initiatives across his real estate properties. Emily, watching from the cafe with Michael and Lily at her side, felt something she hadn't in months: pride. The months that followed brought slow but meaningful change. Michael was promoted to oversee accessibility renovations. Emily became a consultant, offering insights from her lived experience and dancers' understanding of movement. Together, they transformed buildings into spaces of dignity and inclusion. And then, her next birthday arrived. This time, Emily returned to the same Times Square restaurant. But she wasn't alone. Michael sat beside her, Lily bounced in her chair across the table, and Richard, softer now, took a seat too. On the table was a larger cake, but still just one candle. "We all blow together," Lily declared. "That makes the wish stronger." Emily looked around, at her father, who was finally learning to listen. At Lily, whose innocent wisdom had colored her gray days. At Michael, whose quiet steadiness had become her anchor. Last year, she had wished for her old life back. Now she knew she didn't need it. What she had, imperfect, complicated, but real, was enough. They counted to 3 and blew out the candle together. Emily smiled, not the polite smile she had worn for strangers, but a true, full smile that reached her eyes. As the evening wound down, Emily reflected. Sometimes life doesn't give back what was taken. Sometimes it offers something new, different, unexpected. And if you're brave enough to accept it, it can be even more beautiful. She glanced at Michael and Lily, then at her father, who set a small potted orchid on the table. Cut flowers felt wrong, Richard said awkwardly. This one will last. Like us. Lily clapped. We're all growing stronger, right? Emily's heart swelled, and to those watching this story, she would ask, how many times has life taken something from you, only to open space for something greater? If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow our channel for more stories like this.